Welcome back to She Can, where women role models lead by example by telling their stories, their insights and lived experiences to help and guide all of us on our journeys, because it's easier to be what you can see. And I'm really excited to talk to Lina AbiRafeh today. Lina, you are a women's rights activist, author, speaker, known to be delightfully disruptive. You're the author of Yalla Feminists, Arab Rights and Resistance, and you're the founder of Better for Women, a boutique advisory firm delivering practical and innovative solutions for gender equality, which is really beyond rhetoric, for real impact for women and for everyone. We couldn't be more aligned, and I'm so excited to have you. So tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. And I have to start at the beginning. You know, I started very young. I was a girl, I was barely 10, when I took notice of the way the world treated women and girls. It was as if we were less than. That was the perception I had, and I didn't have words for it, but I had a feeling, and the feeling was strong, and it turned out to not be wrong. As I grew up, I was a teenager. I started to listen and learn, read, study, understand what was happening with women around the world. And I realized this wasn't just a small problem, a me problem, or where I was sitting. It was a global problem, and it continues to be so. So I guess you could say I was an angry kid, and I've grown from being an angry kid to a still angry adult. I went to my first protest for women's rights when I was 15. If you can imagine, 15 years old, holding up my sign for equal rights. And now 35 years later, I've told you my age, I am still holding up the same sign. And if you'd asked me back then, did I think that it would take this long? I would have said absolutely not. What baffles me continuously is that we are still fighting for the things that, first of all, we should have won. Secondly, rights we had secured and now are being reversed. But thirdly, what to me is fundamentally common sense, the right of every single one of us to live full and free and equal lives. Who can argue against this? I still don't understand. So that's it in a nutshell. And my career has taken a very interesting trajectory. Humanitarian aid work, academia, and now working independently. And it's really just to find whatever ways I can to intervene, to disrupt, to ignite, to energize, to get people to take action, take up arms intellectually, and to fight this, because it's really going to take all of us if we are ever going to see the kind of change that we deserve.
Lina, and that makes two of us, and I hope many more around the world that do not understand how we are still where we are, especially with the current backlash. Just if I think about what's going on right now, I really think, how can, with all the data and all the knowledge that we have, and really it's serious academic research data that we now have, that we know companies and us as society works better with more inclusion, not less inclusion. So how can we be where we are today? So tell us a bit more about your work with Better for Women.
Well, Better for Women is really a natural progression. You know, I started, as I mentioned, working on in humanitarian aid in context of conflict, post-conflict, and natural disaster. And there, I was working on sexual violence prevention and response. And if you really want to understand how the world is not yet better for women, that is the job to do, to bring it home in a very painful way. Because that, for me, ending all forms of violence against women, sexual violence being the most severe, of course, ending all of those forms is the critical starting point to doing anything else. If we want to build a better world for women, it has to start with that, because the fact that we continue to be unsafe in our bodies, in our lives, in our homes, where most of these cases transpire, actually, the vast majority happen in our homes, often perpetrated by people who are supposed to love us and who we think we love. So, that for me was the fundamental starting point. I said, we have to fix this first. And then let that be the bare minimum, as it should be. Because if we want a better world for women, it's going to take an overhaul of politics. Where are we? We're dramatically underrepresented. We are nearly invisible in political spaces and leadership and decision making. In the economy, we are marginalized, underpaid, in feminized sectors, doing the bulk of unpaid care work. I could go on. How in healthcare, you gave a great example. Our rights are being reversed. We don't have the right to decide what happens to our own bodies. We don't even have knowledge. We're denied the knowledge of it, which to me is baffling. I mean, to even have to exist in ignorance. And again, I remind people, because I'm sure by now people know, something like The Handmaid's Tale, which we refer to more often than not these days, was built on truth, on things that actually happened. I mean, Margaret Atwood, extraordinary writer, didn't have to do much stretching, actually looked to the world to see what was happening. So with all of that in mind, I built this this advisory firm that's me, to be able to say the things that I think need saying and do the work that I feel is going to push us forward. So that means whatever it takes in whatever spaces, even the non-traditional ones, working with corporate partners, working, yes, in academia, yes, with nonprofits, with individuals, with philanthropists, with whatever, anyone, anywhere, who is even remotely interested in pushing this agenda forward. And especially now, where the words that we use to express what we are doing are banned. I mean, we're in a situation where you can't say things like gender equality, or you can't say empowerment, or you can't say diversity. I mean, how we are going backwards at such a rapid pace. For me, I have whiplash. I don't know about how anyone else is surviving it. But the more of us who read up, rise up, speak up, whatever it takes, the better, because in the end, I believe that our cause is right, and we are enough in numbers to be able to tip the balance and to change this.
Yeah, and there's such power in numbers, which is why it's so important that we have so many of you incredible, advocates out there to educate, to facilitate, to hold the space for people to grow, hopefully in the right direction. And that direction is it can only go one way, because we are here to expand and to grow, and that doesn't happen when we go backwards. So Lina, tell us a little bit more. You talk a lot about the future of equality. So how can each one of us shape a genuinely more inclusive future for all? And we talk a lot about girls and women, but really that world is also better for boys and men, because they would be freer within that structure as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I encourage everyone, all people, all women and men everywhere, to first of all just look around in the spaces they occupy. Very often we seem to carry these delusions that we are doing okay, we're fine, we're equal, or it's not here, it's not us, it's them, it's over there. It is here and now, and you and me and everywhere. I mean, we have the data. We were talking about this. We know that no country in the world has achieved equality. Nowhere, not one, not even close. So with that fact in mind, if we as individuals actually started to pay attention and see these things, these are things you cannot unsee. And I tell people to start where you stand, which means look at the space that you occupy and do whatever you can in that space. And sometimes those actions are very small, and it is the small actions that are going to win this. If we look to the horizon, expect that we are going to have a revolution, which I would very much like, and achieve equality and have these grandiose victories, they will not come unless everybody feels like they are responsible. We are all affected by it personally. It is in us, in our homes, in our schools, on our streets, in our offices, in public office. It permeates every aspect of our lives. And people who say it doesn't are not looking deeply enough, are not concerned enough. because once you pay attention, that should infuriate you. That should galvanize you into action. So that is what I say. And I very often say, you know, I chose this as a career, but maybe I could have done something else, you know, in a world that had been equal. Maybe I could have been an artist or an architect or anything else. But the fact that I've dedicated my life to remedying this equality, is important, also frustrating and exhausting. But you know, I don't think people need to do that to take on career activism. No, you can be an activist anywhere, right where you are. It is about embodying that spirit and the fundamental belief that we all deserve better and we can achieve better. And I tell people over and over, you do not have to go far to do good. You do not have to move halfway around the world and lead a rally of thousands of people. No, you do not. You do not have to do big things to do good. You can do them right where you are. And even the conversations we have and the spaces we occupy with the people who might listen to us, that is what is going to change things. And so in the end, it's microscopic, it's tiny actions. And if everybody did that, well, I would say, I'm guessing we'd be a lot better off. And that is what I truly believe.
Yeah, Lina, so you were talking about people listening. What do you feel are your main learnings, and how can we get through to people to actually listen, to internalize this, and to think that they should be part of this movement, or, you know, where you put the human in the middle? I mean, sometimes I feel it's nothing more than that. It's putting us humans in the middle, whether you're a man or a woman or however you identify. If we can just put us in the middle and then go from there, not much can go wrong.
Exactly. That's why when I started my business, I decided that, first of all, I'd have to have a way of communicating with people. So I have a monthly newsletter that's called the Feminist Fire Starter. And the structure is very, very simple. And before the newsletter, when you register, you get a Feminist Fire Starter guide, which is a very easy way to start from level zero, to introduce you to activism, to first of all understand what is happening, because there's no reason to be an activist in your life and in your space unless you recognize that there is something to be active about. You know, that is the starting point. So I talk about what things look like, the world as it is, and then create simple actions that anybody can do at any time, anywhere, no matter what. And that is the message that I've threaded throughout. So that's the guide, and that comes through in the monthly newsletters. What is one thing that you need to see? What is one thing you can do? One thing you must read? One thing, just one thing. Take it small, because otherwise you look at the world. I mean, the challenge with getting to know the realities of this world that are pretty ugly is that you become extremely overwhelmed. You don't know where to start. It's total paralysis. It's absolute terror. It's despondency. You think, well, who am I? I'm just one person. I can't do anything. And the need is so enormous. It is beyond me. I will shrug my shoulders, hold my hands up and say, forget it. I can't do anything in this. But that's not true. This isn't up to governments or the UN or, you know, anything that is high level. Yes, it does need all of that, but it's got to come from us as individuals, really believing that it's better when we all exist together in a world that is safe and free and equal. I mean, it is better for everybody. You said it yourself, and I fully agree. So to empower people to do that, they have to be able to take it in bite-sized chunks. You know, the way I see things is there are people, there are the converted people who say, yes, I see it, I'm doing it, I'm out there. You know, maybe they're like you and me, spreading the message in the ways that we know how. Maybe they're on the front lines of whatever, marching off. Great. Those are not the people. They're already in it. There are people on the other side, I hope there are not too many of them, who are the entrenched opposition. It will be very, very difficult to change their minds. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of effort to get those people moving. But there is a chunk in the middle. There is the movable middle. And that is our target. And that's the majority. I truly believe that those are the people who say, well, yeah, I guess it's bad, but I don't really know. But how do I start? But where do I go? But what should I do? And what's really going on? I got you. Those are the people. And I think that's an important category. And the other category is the group of people, I would say, feminists who are feminists by inclination, who say, wait, how have we not solved this? Didn't we fix this already? What I don't understand why we're still fighting. So those two, I mean, there are a lot of people that we can motivate and activate and ignite. And I think they're just waiting for the right information and some simple actions to be able to step up.
Yeah, and I love that you use the word ignite, and I love that you have fire starter in your newsletter, because that's exactly how I feel about it when I think about it. That comes to mind. So you've just done a second TEDx talk. Talk to us about your message.
The message is one that was deeply personal for me. It's about hope, what hope means. I said in the talk that hope, it's not a frivolous kind of fleeting thing. It's not fuzzy. It's not anything like that. It is not a luxury even. It is a lifeline. It is what gets you out of bed every day. It gets you to stand up. I say hope takes you to the door, but then your actions open it, kick it down, burn it down, whatever it is that you do. But without that fundamental belief, that hope that things can be different, what would we do? We would all shrug and surrender, and we'd quit, and we would say, we accept the world as it is. It's okay. Let the wars continue. Let the discrimination continue. Let the violence continue. Let the inequality continue. It's fine. I am accepting that, because surrendering to the status quo is what you'd be doing. There's really no such thing as standing still when you think about it. In an evolving and revolving world, standing still is effectively going backwards. So either you're moving and you're pushing, and that hope for me is the fuel that is going to get us where we need to go. So it's a bit of a redefinition and a reanimation of that energy force that I think is so important to get us to believe that a better world is possible.
So, Lina, you have been talking about this. It's a relentless, often demoralizing process of doing this work. So, what are your sacred habits to keep the optimism and the energy and the drive and the inspiration to go for it?
Oh, that was a very hard lesson to learn. When I was working overseas, working in war zones especially, it's very hard to not be discouraged, because as you imagine, what can you do? These situations, a place like Afghanistan or a place like Central African Republic, so overwhelming that you can't really make a dent. But what you have to do is revise the metrics. You have to revise how you define what making a dent really means. And that, for me, has come to mean, after decades of rethinking this, the small stuff, the conversations I've had with individual women or girls or men, whoever, where something has shifted. And it might not be something that I see in my lifetime, but I feel like there's a tiny change, and that change will sprout, and that change is contagious. And if everybody did that kind of thing, if everybody measured those things in those micro hopes, that is where that leads to the macro actions, right? That's the stuff that grows exponentially. It's the ripples in the pond. It's whatever metaphor you want to use, but that really is where the power is. Because if I looked to any country, even the US where I sit right now, and say, well, I'm going to fix it and we're going to see this in my lifetime, I would love that. Yes. But it might not be achieved in our lifetime. So for me, I'm committed to using this lifetime I have to be useful, even in small ways. So I can say, all right, it made a difference there, and that effort made a difference there. And even if I get one email or hear one comment saying, I didn't know that, but now I do, and I see this differently. Great. Because that, for me, is how that fire starts.
Yeah, and I sometimes feel the setbacks are an information point. They're just a data point of where we need to shine a bit more light and find different ways of getting to people. Because we're talking about people, right? We're talking about companies that are made up by people, or any organization made up by people, where we need to do the work. And so, yeah, and patience, I think, is definitely a virtue, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, one thing to remember, and I think we all know, but we just don't want to acknowledge, is that social change is never linear.
Yeah.
You know, it is never secure, is never guaranteed. It's not going to go nicely in order, step 1 to step 10. As much as I wish that were the case, it is not. So for us to measure any kind of success, we have to zoom all the way out, decades, generations, and look at those long-term gains over time, over a long time, and think, okay, even if I don't achieve what I would like in my lifetime, let us move things forward a tiny bit, and let us also look to the next generation and hope that they do the same. And then generations from now, they will not have to fight these same battles. And that is what I wish as well. That idea that we just have to accept these setbacks and be prepared for them, so that we're not totally crushed and destroyed and debilitated, so that we are able to pivot, to rise up again, to keep going, to fight forward, you know, not to just fight back and to react against all these things, but to push things forward even farther.
Yeah, I love that you said that. Lina, so let's talk about the sisterhood and how we can strengthen it, because there is an enormous power in numbers, and those numbers are not necessarily always there or feel convicted enough to show up in those numbers. So what, in your experience, strengthens our sisterhood?
But, you know, I feel like there are good people out there. And that's also, you know, that probably answers your previous question. What keeps me going is the belief that, yes, we are the majority, the good people who care about each other, about the world, you know, men and women both are the majority. But too many of us are too quiet. And I think it is lack of information, or lack of action, or ideas, or fear sometimes, certainly. I mean, the trade-offs of speaking out can sometimes be quite high, as we know. You know, those of us who put ourselves out there, we're not always liked. Having worked on women's rights my whole life, I am not very well liked at times. And I accept that. Because for me, and I'm hoping for more and more people, the cost of staying silent is too high. I would rather speak out and risk than sit with it and suffocate in what is for me, a stark reality and an important truth that needs to be shared. So, you know, the challenge of the good people being quiet, I think, is something that we are slowly chipping away at. I see, and when I zoom out at my, 30,000 feet, is that there are more and more people saying, wait a minute, this isn't what it's supposed to be. This isn't how we're supposed to go. And this isn't how we're supposed to treat each other. And I think our own kind of self-actualization has come into that. Our ways of communicating, our ways of seeing and being exposed, the internet, all those things, you can't not know. You can't not see. I mean, there is no way to miss what's happening in the world right now. So I think that's been an interesting development for us in the ways that we share information, and the ways that we communicate with each other across every possible boundary and barrier, and the ways that we are aware of what's happening in places that before maybe we couldn't even find on a map. And even right here, it is so much around us. And I think waking up to those things, like I said, is what prompts people to be less and less quiet. So the uprising of good people is what I look forward to.
Lina, so tell us a little bit what it feels like to live in the US right now as Lina AbiRafeh. I mean,
so complicated. I mean, I would love to give you good news on this front, but as a woman, as a feminist, as an activist, as an immigrant, as an Arab, and also Palestinian and Lebanese, I am at the intersection of many things that are making it extremely complicated. Yeah. It is a difficult space. It is all of my identities are at risk, is what it feels like. It feels very scary. It's uncomfortable. Every day brings us some fresh new crisis, a setback, some new hell that I think, how much more can we tolerate? At what point, we very often say we have to hit rock bottom before we all rise up and say, okay, well, every day I think this must be the bottom. And we somehow fall, there must be a trapdoor. We somehow fall lower than that. I am not, I'm not happy with the state of the country at present at all. And I think a lot of people share that. There is going to be a big protest, for instance, coming up in 2 days' time on the 14th. There are a lot of people who are ready to go out into the streets, ready to stand up or do whatever. I don't mean literally in the streets. I mean in any way that you can take some action, because this is not how things should be. I never was under any delusions that America is better than anybody else. No, I mean, I have seen extraordinary human rights movements all around the world, feminist movements all around the world. That is not an American thing, nor a Western thing. None of this had to be invented here or imported or imposed. No, everybody, everywhere I've ever been, has always risen up and demanded their own rights and freedom. But what we're seeing here is an unusual amount of repression. And that is dangerous. And it's also contagious. There are other countries that are watching this model of, closing our doors and closing our minds and closing our hearts, and they could follow it.
This is
and I
what
don't
I
know
think
where
is
this is
so
going to end.
problematic. Yeah, this is
Yes.
so problematic, because we are showing role models who are actively going after people, who lead in very harmful ways. It's very destabilizing for the world. I always say that this is not an American problem. This is a worldwide problem. And it does affect every single one of us in one way or another. And so, Lina, I'm wondering, what will success look like for you? What does it mean? What does it look like for you? How do you show up every day to reframe this notion of success for you?
Oh, well, our long-term success is genuine equality. It is rights. It is justice. It is liberation. Big, important words. And I think that's what we all deserve, and not one drop less for all of us, regardless of the body we're born into or the color we are or the place that we live. Enough now. This cannot matter. What matters is that we all learn finally to coexist, to respect each other, to grant each other space, to live out our full lives in the way that we deserve. And that I don't know if I'll see that in my lifetime. And I have very often said to people I've worked with, dig me from the grave and let me know. I want updates, frequent updates from wherever I end up on how we are going. But my hope is that the next generation will deal with it a little bit less, and then the following a little bit less, and that we see those successes. But for me, I have to measure the successes in the daily actions, because otherwise, eyes on the long-term prize, it is going to devastate us. So I look at the small things that I can do every single day. And I really wake up and say, what am I going to tackle today? What am I going to say? Even if it's hard, even if it hurts, being in this kind of space and the person that I am and the identities that I possess in this one body, it's a lot of things, has cost me jobs and friends and a sense of safety and belonging, a lot of things.
Yeah.
But every day I wake up and say, all right, small things, a small thing, a small thing. And every night I need to put my head on the pillow saying I did everything I could do in this day. And that's the only way that I measure it, because otherwise, what else can we do right now? I go to the marches, I speak out, I blog, I post, I write, I scream, I talk about, whatever. I can have conversations like this anywhere, anytime, any space where anybody will listen, and even when people don't listen. Because maybe Maybe something I say will just sink in somewhere and come out later. That's fine too. And it sounds like a lowering of expectations, but it's just it's being realistic about the fight that we have, and also the fundamental belief that we are right. And that is what helps me sleep at night, is because I truly believe that liberation is our right.
Yeah, it is. Lina, so talk to us a bit about your book, Yalla Feminist. Tell us about where did, you had it in you. You obviously had to write it. Tell us about the process and about the book itself.
Well, that's my third book, and every book that I write is a labor of love, and something that has to come out whether people read it or not, whether I like it or not. That book in particular, with my co-author, Rebecca O'Keefe, who is an extraordinary feminist and activist, that is, if you will, a love letter to the work that I did in the Arab region. Because spending time there and looking at young feminist activists and how they organize and how they mobilize and the convictions they have that are extraordinary for me and much stronger than the older generation, in the ways that they stand up and they fight for what's right. I was very inspired by that. I really think that young feminists, male and female, are not just the future, they are the now. Everywhere, not only in the Arab region, but everywhere, movements are being led by young people who are saying, to hell with this. I'm not putting up with this anymore. And I love seeing that. And that for me is very inspiring. And that book is a tribute to that phenomenon that I examined, I supported, I was in awe of, I was applauding in whatever ways that I could. I do have another book that will be out next year, I hope next year, that is a guide to feminist activism. I am only just completing a draft, so I'm very excited about it. It is something that hopefully will have a broader appeal. It takes the fire starter concept and builds it out into a book, because there is so much information and there are so many actions and so many reasons why we should all be feminists, that I could go on for many books, but I've tried to capture it in a way that is just as simple and digestible and inspiring as some of the shorter pieces that I've produced on this topic. So there are still many books to come. And my website will showcase all of that stuff, and I'll keep blogging and writing and newslettering and whatever else I can do in the interim, because books are not for everyone. So I think there's a lot of us who prefer kind of short and sharp, say what you want to say. If you can't tweet it, don't tell me. And that's great. I will continue to spread the message through every means that I know how. I'm learning a lot about social media in this process, really. But the idea that the more ways we say it, the more people we reach, the more influence we have, and the stronger we are.
Lina, so what would you say are you most proud of to date?
Oh, that is the hardest question you've asked. The act of survival, I think, is something really to celebrate at this stage. That we're still here and we're still at it and we still believe in it, no matter what the cost. And I have to say, I have an enormous amount of gratitude, because I feel very lucky. I am able to raise my voice. Many people are not. They would face greater risks than I. And I keep saying, everybody has a voice, but not everybody has a microphone. So I think my successes and satisfactions come from the small things, the moments where I was able to amplify or support or share. It's hard to pin down one specific thing, because it really has to be in the actions every day. And like I said, as long as I am happy with what I have done in that day, every single day, then that is a good day. Yeah. And that has to be enough.
And you have to be very proud of all of the things that you do every day, because it's definitely charting a way forward where sometimes there isn't a road, right? And there's a beautiful saying, as you walk the road, as you walk your path, the road will appear, especially, for it feels quite lonely at times, this sort of work. And I think we have to find more our villages. And I wonder if that's the same for you. It can be quite isolating. And even though I feel that with every ounce of, backlash or more rights being taken away, it is grounding this purpose even more. But we have to find, because we can't do it alone, right? We need
Exactly.
this village, and it's not a village, it has to be a massive mega town. And so how do you do that?
It's funny. I call myself an accidental activist because, like I said, no one, at least I certainly didn't set out to say, well, look, the world is so messy. Isn't this wonderful? I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. That never, it never struck me as a good thing. And also, surprising for some, perhaps, I'm not a confrontational person. I don't want to have to fight in the ways that I constantly refer. I don't want to have to do that. But what I find, instead of focusing, I just shift my lens a little bit. Instead of focusing on the backlash, on the haters, on the antagonists, on the opposition, on all of the negativity that comes our way, because my goodness, it certainly does, is I look at the entry points and opportunities and the small sparks, and I look at the allies and the new entrants to this to these values. And I think, well, that's, I'm going to keep looking there. And, even if that means ignoring the comments sometimes, oftentimes, that come up on anything we say or do, and focusing on the ones where you've had an impact. And then you'll see there, you're not alone there. And that for me is refreshing and is hopeful. The idea that you've lost some, let them go. That's fine. And I don't engage and I don't push back. I don't fight. There are some people who are far better than I love them. I applaud them, who are able to say, well, listen here, let me tell you, I will turn away from that side because it's too much energy for me that I want to dedicate to the other side. Yeah. And so that's what I do. I preserve and I pivot my energy, because that, at least for me, feels like a better way to instigate the change that I'd like to see, is to work with people who say, okay, thank you. I learned something I didn't know, and now I know what to do, and tell me more. Those are my people, and they're there.
Lots of them. Lina, so tell us about your plans and goals for this year and the next year.
Well, this year, what a strange year it's been already. We're only halfway through, and I have no idea what the second half will bring us. I think with what's happening in this country, in the US, with the Trump administration and the defunding and the shutdown of USAID and all the connected sort of agencies to that, and even the values that underlie that, and the UN and what's happening with UN reform and the shrinkage and not paying dues. We are in the process of a major transition in the way that we understand this work, understand our sense of obligation to protect and support each other. And maybe there are other ways to do this, new ways to do this, and I welcome those ways. But right now there is a vacuum, and it's a dangerous one. There's always been a need for reform. There's always a way we can do things better, and I do believe that. But an abrupt halt is really not the answer in many ways, and too many things are happening that are really catastrophic that I do not know how we'll come back from those things. Yeah. I look at what's happening in my home countries, and I look at Palestine, and I think, my God, we're in month 20 of this, and what can I say? All I can do is keep talking and keep sharing and supporting and amplifying every single day. So, to answer your question with no answer at all, is the unpredictability of this year has put so many of us on shaky grounds. And I think we wake up in the morning thinking, well, what are we supposed to do now? What happened? My God, what happened when I slept? And how am I supposed to respond to it? And I think managing that, and again, surviving that is going to be the challenge that we all face. And how do we galvanize? How do we continue to have the energy to push and to fight? I think that's important as well, because the setbacks, these waves that are hitting us one after the other are just so colossal. I don't want us to collapse beneath them. So to take the hits if we must, and to remain standing, and to find a way to form something stronger than we had before. That's, I'd like to see the year end that way, at least, with some strength and conviction for what will come, and maybe even a world that is slightly better by the end of this year than how it was in the beginning.
Yeah, we're gonna hold on to that. Lina, what takeaways would you like our listeners to have from listening to your story?
I would say that this is a very personal issue for all of us. It is a duty for all of us to look around and understand what's happening and stand up and take action, to see and to say what must be seen and what must be said, and to have the courage to do that, even in the smallest ways, in the smallest spaces, because that kind of courage is contagious, and that's what's going to fuel us forward. If we say, no, this is the red line, it has been crossed, I do not accept this, it's not for me, not for the people I love, not for anyone. And when we all do that and take that little sense of responsibility to care about each other, to care about ourselves even, because all of us are losing in the way the world currently is. We might not see it, we might not admit it, but it's true. So how to actually care enough to do even the small things to make things better, I would say that is the message. And that is encapsulated in start where you stand. There you go. That is the message I would leave people with.
Lina, I'm so grateful for you to be here, for everything that you are and do, what you stand for, and for telling your story today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure.